Thanks, Ed. You did great, Ed. You did great. Hey, I want to thank you, Ed, not just for the work you're doing here as a union apprentice. I want to say thank you for your service to this nation. We're grateful to you, particularly coming off of Veterans Day. We thank you. Joe, thank you for the great instruction that you provide Ed and others who I had the chance to visit with earlier today. And I want to thank Secretary Walker for her great leadership at the Department of Labor and Industry. We thank you. And I want to thank all of our elected leaders who are here today. I especially want to prod the members of the media to ask Senator Flynn what the heck went wrong with him and why he ended up in the Senate when the rest of his family were members of the building trade. So that should be the first question that you ask Senator Flynn. And it's good, of course, to be back in Scranton, back here in Lackawanna County, as we celebrate National Apprenticeship Week. I specifically wanted to be here at 524 because of not just the fact that they represent over 800 pipe fitters and they've successfully trained over 200 apprentices, but because they're doing it the right way. And they are key to our economic resurgence here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and all across the country. It is going to be tradeswomen and men like those who are represented here who are going to be part of rebuilding our country and doing the important work that we're in a position to do now thanks to the federal investments that are coming, thanks to the President, Senator Casey, Representative Cartwright, and many others who had a hand in that. And I'm particularly impressed with the work that is being done here, especially around the highly technical skills that are going to be needed to do these jobs of tomorrow. And I know how challenging that work can be. I think it was with some of the members here that I got on one of those virtual welders not too long ago up here in northeastern Pennsylvania. I was very proud of the fact that I got a 72. I thought that was pretty good. Secretary of L&I told me, well, it was better than a 71, so that was positive. And then I felt real good after I saw Senator Flynn get somewhere in the 30s, so I knew I had a shot. I'm sorry to beat up Senator Flynn, who's a good friend and a great ally. I also wanted to be here today not just to celebrate the important work 524 is doing, but because I think we have to have an important message to the broader public about the value of this kind of work. And I think the value of this kind of work and the respect we show it has to begin in our middle schools and in our high schools. I think we have a responsibility to fund important programs, VOTEC programs in our middle schools and high schools to turn people on to the idea of being a welder, certainly one who's better than me at it, the idea of being a plumber, the idea of being a pipe fitter, things that a lot of times high school students never get to see, never get to experience. And when you talk to union apprentices, as I do here in northeastern Pennsylvania and all across this great Commonwealth, what I hear from them when I ask them what their story was into that particular trade, for a lot of them, it was a meandering path that ultimately led them to a place like this where they could finally feel happy and fulfilled and provide for their family. I think we have a responsibility to make sure that that meandering path allows them to get there more quickly than they do right now. And one of the best ways we can do that is by investing in more VOTEC in our middle schools and in our high schools. The good news is, thanks to the common sense bipartisan budget that we passed several months ago and was voted on by the members who are standing here today, we made historic investments in VOTEC in our high schools and middle schools. Consider this for a moment. 22 years ago, when Governor Ridge served as governor of this great Commonwealth, we invested about $200 million in VOTEC and similar classes in our middle schools and high schools. The year before I was elected governor, we invested half of that, about $100 million. Thanks to the effort of these lawmakers, we were able to begin chipping away at that, adding another $24 million on top of what we were already spending to try and get back to the figures that I think we need to get back to. So we want to begin this journey into a place like here at 524 in our middle schools and high schools. Then the key is, how do we sustain programs like this? How do we make sure that the apprentices behind me get the great training that they need to go out and help us rebuild our Commonwealth and our country? We have to invest more in pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs. And that's exactly what we're doing thanks to the bipartisan budget that we passed. So follow me. It goes to high schools, middle schools, then into our apprenticeship programs. And then the issue is, where are we going to train people for the jobs of tomorrow, and how are we going to fund that? We were able to create the first in the nation initiative that we've dubbed the Commonwealth Workforce Transformation Project that I announced just a couple months ago in Pittsburgh. This is a fully funded initiative that is going to train 10,000 new workers in all of the trades to do the work on the federal infrastructure projects that we'll be doing today, tomorrow, and well in the future. So when you see a road being worked on, a bridge being built or reconstructed, pipeline being laid, broadband or high-speed internet being taken into a community that right now doesn't have it, these federally funded projects, again, thanks to Senator Casey, Representative Cartwright, the President, and others, we now have the ability to train 10,000 workers on the job in that work and put them in a position where they then have the requisite skills, where they can be a member of the building trades, not just for that project, but for projects going forward. So again, it starts in our middle schools and high schools. It goes through apprenticeship programs, on-the-job training that's fully funded with this unique initiative, and it puts these folks out in the field doing this important work. I think it's critically important that we not only invest in their future, but hear me on this, I think it's critically important that we respect them and their future. I'm sick and tired of hearing college counselors in high schools say to a high school student, and you've heard them say this, well, college might not be right for you. Maybe you should learn how to be a welder or a plumber. I think that elitist attitude is something that is infecting our communities in a really negative way. To me, if you're in the 10th or 11th grade and you're turned on by being a welder, we should celebrate that and treat that career path with the same level of respect as we treat someone going to the University of Scranton, which, by the way, as 6 members of my administration did. What we need to do as a government, what we need to do as union leaders, is show that pathway to success and opportunity. And for some, it takes them to the University of Scranton, and for others, it takes them to a union hall like this, but both are critically important and deserve equal respect in our society. Pennsylvania should be a place where everyone, no matter what you look like, where you come from, who you love, who you pray to, everyone has the freedom to chart their own course and the opportunity to succeed. And when I think about freedom and I think about opportunity, I think about halls like this, the kind of hall that Senator Flynn's grandpa helped build, the kind of hall where Joe is training the next generation of leaders in our community. That's why I'm here today, because this place deserves and demands not just resources, but respect. And I want everyone, when we think about the future of this great Commonwealth, to think about places like this, workers like them who are doing this important work today and well in the future. So thanks for welcoming me back here today. Appreciate all of you. Appreciate the lawmakers behind me who voted for this critical funding that's going to put us in a position to do this work. I want to thank the union leaders who are with us, both standing behind me and those who are out here in the audience. And with that, we'd be more than happy to take some questions from the media. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Anybody got anything? Okay.
We do it one-on-one.
Go ahead.
I have an off topic, is that okay?
Sure. Is there anything about this anybody wants to ask? Okay. Go ahead.
So the Senate just recently passed some budget bills. Didn't include level up funding. Can you just talk about how that's going to impact the local schools? And obviously that's a lot of money that these schools need to continue to run.
Well, actually, our schools all across Pennsylvania, public schools, received an historic amount of funding in the bipartisan budget that passed. Literally more funding than ever before in the history of Pennsylvania, including important initiatives like $100 million in a new fund created to allow our schools to be able to hire mental health counselors and provide mental health services. For the first time ever, every one of our 1.8 million students going to school have universal free breakfast. You show up at school, you have an empty belly, it's going to get filled because of the work that these lawmakers did here with this bipartisan common sense budget. The money for Level Up is still subject to negotiation between the House and Senate. They continue to have, I think, good discussions. They've been productive, and hopefully those discussions will come to a landing real soon.
How important is that level up funding to get them to the starting line at this point?
I think it's all important, and members voted for it, and they're going to continue to work on the language that drives those dollars out. Understand, I think there's been a little bit of misunderstanding on this. We've got a roughly $46 billion budget, and there's some language necessary to drive out maybe another $200 million of that. So we're talking about a real small percentage. I'm not saying it's not important, but a real small percentage of the overall budget that, you know, House Democratic leaders, Senate Republican leaders are still working together on to negotiate a final outcome. We'll get there, I'm confident. Anything else? Yes,
Yeah. Governor, what's your intent on the Lackawanna County judicial seat? You intend to fill it before 2025?
Well, first, let me congratulate Judge Munley on her election. And as we do with other vacancies, we're going to work with our colleagues and friends in the Senate, like Senator Flynn, to determine the best course forward.
And on Israel, there's members of your party now who believe that perhaps the reaction by the Israeli Defense Forces has been a little extreme. I just wonder if you want to comment on that. I know that the original event was quite horrific, but there's a lot of suffering that's going on the Palestinian side, and that people are highlighting.
I think this is a moment where everyone, elected leaders and others, need to speak and act with moral clarity. And recall that on October 7th, a terrorist organization, as defined by the US government, in an unprovoked attack, killed over 1,200 people in Israel, primarily Israelis, but a lot of multinationals as well, including Americans. They also took 240 people thereabout hostage, including roughly 10 Americans. I think if you're going to speak and act with moral clarity, we need to be on the side of the hostages, not the hostage takers. I think it's important to also acknowledge and mourn the loss of innocent lives, but recognize that a terrorist group struck a pluralistic democracy, and they need to be able to respond. For my part, as governor, I think it's critically important here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that everyone feels safe. I think it's important that we not allow the events that are occurring in the Middle East to be used as a justification for people's anti-Semitism or as an excuse for Islamophobia or anti-Arab sentiment. And I'm going to continue to call that out wherever I can and make sure that everyone here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, here in northeastern Pennsylvania and across Pennsylvania, is safe and feels safe in their community. I think that's the important work that I can do right now as a state leader, while also, again, doing my best to speak and act with moral clarity on the events in the Middle East.
Has your administration reached out to both sides to ask them what they need to be secure, like the rabbis, the
When you say both sides, you mean
Yeah.
folks here at home. I've had numerous
Yeah.
I've had numerous meetings with leaders in the Muslim community, leaders in the Jewish community. We've had a good opportunity to dialogue, in part about the events in the Middle East, but in large measure about how to make sure that people are safe here in their communities in Pennsylvania, and where people have the ability to exercise their First Amendment right to free speech, free peaceful speech, free speech that doesn't provoke any kind of violence in our communities. I hope those communities have felt heard by me and my administration. And as I said, we're going to continue to call out hate, whether it's hate in the form of anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, anti-Arab sentiment, wherever we see it. Just a couple weeks ago, maybe 10 days ago, I'm losing track of time, Boris, I'm sorry. Just a few feet from my office in the state capitol, there were protesters there protesting their position on behalf of sort of I want to characterize this correctly, sort of a Palestinian, pro-Hamas view of what was happening in the Middle East. They happen to be, at some points, expressing views that I profoundly disagree with. The reason I'm sharing this story with you is because as that event was wrapping up, a peaceful event, and folks were leaving the grounds of the state capitol, someone came out and made a bunch of inappropriate, targeted slurs directed at one of the peaceful protesters, and I believe brandished some sort of weapon. The prosecutor in that community charged the individuals with violation of our ethnic intimidation law. That's our hate crimes law. And I immediately condemned that, because whether or not I agree with the speech, these folks were peacefully protesting. They have every right to be able to do that. They have every right to be heard. And I want them to feel like they are living in a place that, in the spirit of what Penn tried to build here, a place where we have inclusion, a place where people from all different walks of life, all different faiths are welcomed here and feel safe here, that those folks have a right to feel safe. And I want them to know that their governor is on their side to be able to peacefully protest, and they deserve to feel safe in their communities. I think that's the most important thing I can do right now, and I'm going to continue to do everything in my power to make sure that all people here in Pennsylvania feel safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.